What's up, YouTubers? Johnny DIY here. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace your fuel injectors on your Honda CR-V, Accord, Civic, pretty much any Honda model, but specifically it's going to be on the K24 engine. Let's see, right here. It's the Earth Dreams 2.4 liter, but it's going to be the same process on the 1.5 liter. It's a little different. It looks a little different, but the same process, the same location and everything. And it's really going to be the same process on pretty much any Honda going over it. But the symptoms we've been having on this car was, while we were driving, it flashed all the lights, lit up all the lights. They call it Christmas tree when all your dash lights come on. I ran the scan tool and it was code P0303. So it'll be the same P0304, P0301. You can get this fix covered by Honda if you're still under warranty. If you're out of warranty, I do have some notes for you. You can try and get them to cover this with a goodwill claim. You're gonna have to bring it to Honda and you're gonna have to get it diagnosed by them, and that's gonna cost probably right around $200, but you have to get it diagnosed before you can do that. Once it's diagnosed, you can talk to the service manager and you're gonna wanna work out something with them, and because these fuel injectors really shouldn't be going bad on these cars so early, you know. A lot of them have been going out. This car has about 120,000. A lot of them have been going out before that. So you can open up a claim with Honda by calling them and try and get them to cover at least half of the repair bill, because to have this done at the dealer, depending where you live, it can be all the way up to around $2,000, you know, anywhere from usually $1,500 to $2,000 for this repair. It's not a cheap repair, so take that in note. And a couple other symptoms that you may be thinking is, well, maybe it's my spark plugs throwing those codes, and it could be. That's easy to check your spark plugs or your coils. It could be your coils. For the coils, that's super easy. Once I get this cover off, we'll look at those coils, but you can just take one coil, the one that's throwing the code, and swap it to the one on the other side, and then run the engine. And if that code jumps to the other cylinder, like it goes P0303 to P0302, then you know it's just the coil. But this is kind of a widespread problem, so I'm just letting you know it's most likely the fuel injectors. If it's throwing those codes, if it's lighting up the dash when you're on the freeway, and it sends it into limp mode, so you'll be driving along and then boom, it'll drop down and go, you know, you can only go like 40-50 miles an hour. And we noticed this symptom more when you were really gassing the pedal, giving it a lot of gas, like flooring it or something. It would really bog it down. But you could kind of baby it for a while, and that's what we did until I was able to order the parts. So now we're going to be replacing those injectors. Sorry for talking a lot, but this was kind of information you needed to know for a lot of these Hondas, so be aware. And if you guys are new to my channel, please do me a favor and click the subscribe and notification bell so you can get all my new videos. All right, let's get into this one. So the fuel injectors are located on the back side of the engine, and they're actually underneath the intake manifold, so you're gonna have to be kind of working back there. You may want to get a pad to lean over this or some cardboard. And then I also got this kind of short adjustable shower rod that I use. You could also use a stick, but it allows you to prop open the hood a lot further than it usually does, so that'll really help you. You could take the hood off, but I wouldn't do that unless you mark your locations. It's a lot easier to just prop it up like that. That's just a little quick note. And I also want to say that I am going to include all the links down in the descriptions to all the replacement parts, like the fuel injectors and gaskets, as well as all the other tools and supplies I'm going to be using today, so you guys can check those out for me. Thanks. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is disconnect negative post on our battery. Since we're going to be working on the fuel system, we don't want any chance of creating spark for the fuel, because there will be leaking fuel and vapors around the engine. So this is the safety protocol. You can hook up another battery through your OBD2 port so you don't lose any of your settings, and so your computer doesn't have to relearn. And now we need to take off this little cover, and has just a few 10 millimeters. This is just a beauty cover. Just 5-10 millimeters. This plastic cover comes off. So now you can see your coils, what I was talking about. These are the ones you can move around if you want to test that. And then if you take this little 10 millimeter off, pull the coil off, that's where you're going to change your spark plugs underneath each of these. You can test those, check those out. We replaced these not long ago, so I know that wasn't the problem. But see, it's really easy to change your spark plugs. You should do that every 150 to 200,000. Then this wiring harness right here should pull out if we pull to the left. Just kind of pressure fit in there. And then this right here should snap. And we'll go ahead and take these off too. Gee, maybe cricket. Okay, with those removed, now we can pull out these coils. This should unsnap too, right here. Just a little clip right there. Snap that. You just wiggle these coils side to side and pull up, and they'll loosen up from the spark plug. That's why you put a little dielectric grease on the end of these. On the end of these right here, and they won't get stuck on there. You need to start disconnecting these plugs from the coils. There's a snap plug back here. You gotta push in the top on this side towards the driver's side and then pull. And sometimes you gotta put a little flat head underneath here while you're pressing that button just to loosen it up. These things kind of get stuck. And then this one back here, push on the top and pull out. And then there's one more in the back. Okay, and that one's got a tab on the top that you press that's facing the firewall, so it'll be on this side right here where my finger is. Push in on that and pull up. And then these little plastic zip tie clips will be pushed through this little bracket right here. And if you press on the underside, these little side clips, just press on one side and then twist it, like pry it like that, and it'll pull through the other side. So just press down on one side with your flat head and it should pull right out if you twist it like that. This cover right here should come off just by pulling. Chances are your valve cover is probably leaking because they almost always are if you're doing the fuel injectors too, so you're gonna have to replace it. Plus it kind of makes it easier to get to things, so we'll go ahead and take this hose off. With these clips, just use your pliers and pull it back a little bit, and then give the rubber a little twist with your pliers. That'll break the seal. And we'll be able to pull it up. We're gonna go ahead and take off this air hose right here. It's gonna be easier to get rid of this so we can get to the throttle body area too, because we're gonna have to be working in there. Both sides. One there and one here. And just go ahead and gently pry off that hose. Once you got this end off, go ahead and wiggle it. And spray a little WD-40 on the connections, the rubber, just to loosen it up, or a tiny bit of liquid dish soap with water. That helps loosen it up. All these kind of connections. There we go. So one little hose on the back right here, and then a hose to the valve cover, and then this hose in the front, which was this one. And then on the wiring harness down here, there's one of those clips that you got to push in and jiggle that out. Same thing right here. This blue clip I'm trying to figure out right here. Okay, so the clip we figured out clips in towards the firewall, and you got to put a flathead in between this and this right here. See, there's a little lock on there. Put it in between there and pry it open and it'll just pop open. It's just a tricky design. And then let's see, one hose right here on the back of the valve cover. Okay, so that line in the blue clip, just push that aside because that's a fuel line. It goes over to here. We'll only remove that if we have to. And this clip right here on the front goes on the valve cover. There's one little button in the front right here, and then push to the left. And then it slides. Clips. Okay, now we need to do the throttle body. Got 4 bolts around it, 12 millimeter. I think it's just going to be too much connected to the intake manifold if I don't take it out. Got a washer on them. But they're tight. Whoever put these on, or it's got Loctite on them. Over torqued for sure. Plate. Okay, so the nut plate, this faces in, so it was like this on the front ones. Same thing on the back one, this faces in. It'll be like that. Okay, so now I should be able to, yeah, I'll just push this throttle body aside because let me see how many hoses are connected still. Just 2, I think, but they were really hard to get to. I think it was easier just to set this aside. And there's 2 more hoses need to remove right here. This one from right here, set that aside, and then this one underneath it that connects to the throttle plate right here. You could disconnect that one down there, but I thought it'd be easier to do these 2. Now we need to start taking off the actual manifold bolts, which are 12 millimeter. Just gonna crack them loose. Okay, so after those 5 bolts are removed, we come on underneath the passenger side. Follow where my light is. See those 2 bolts right there? That looks like a bracket that's connected to the bottom of the intake manifold. If I'd known about this, I'd probably have done it first. There's a note for you guys if you have this one. Loosen up those first on ramps or something. I got the car jacked up. See this L bracket? There's actually 1 bolt right here that you take out. That's a 12 millimeter. It's a lot easier to get this 1 bolt out than these 2. There's just no angle to get those, so just get this 1 right there. Okay, with that bracket removed, theoretically this should come off. Okay, change of plans. I couldn't get it out. I had to end up taking off this little insulation cover on the back of the intake manifold. It's got 4 10 millimeter bolts like this. They're pretty long, so it takes a while, and I had to get 1 from down under. So hopefully that'll be it now. I'll try again to take it out.
There's a hose on the bottom.
More hose underneath. Apparently we missed, of course. So now we need to take the valve cover off. Start on the outside to loosen the valve cover. You start on the inside when you tighten it. A bunch of these little 10 millimeters. Then you can go like diagonal, like a figure 8 pattern, but these things are barely even tightened on there. Oh, it's not that big a deal.
Sneaky little bastard.
Okay, so on this 2.4 liter, I think there is 9. That'd be sneaky.
Dual purpose bolt, I think.
See that? That's a sneaky number 10. Remember that little plastic cover that snapped on? Okay, we got it off. Go ahead and pull your gasket off too. That should give us enough room now. Yeah, you're gonna want to replace this gasket too, for sure. We got cracking already, look at that. Okay, with the intake manifold off, we need to disconnect this high pressure line right here. It's a 19 millimeter. You're gonna wanna put a rag underneath here. It's gonna leak some gasoline. We gotta take that off first before we unbolt the fuel rail, which is right here. So loosen it slowly. Do it slowly until it starts leaking out the gas. Now we gotta take the fuel rail off. There's a bunch of these 10 millimeters on top right here, all along here. Some are nuts and some are bolts. I think the studs are on the end. Can't really see them. Okay, so there was 8 fasteners, 6 bolts, 2 nuts holding the rail in. Okay, so to pry the fuel rail out, we got this little trim panel tool, but you could use a small pry bar with the end bent. And we're just gonna get it under the fuel rail and pry it up. It's really tight in there because of the way that these fuel injectors seat. But with this tool, it comes out pretty easy. It dumps fuel all over the bottom of your car. Okay, with the fuel rail out of the way, you gotta disconnect each injector. Looks like there's a tab on the bottom side. Okay, so we got one injector out, and this is the trick. You get a mirror like this on the stick and get some of your locking vice grips, the needle nose ones. These ones with the angle work really good. And then we put it right on the end of the injector. This is the one we got out. Right on this part right here, the skinny part on the thing, and locked it on there and wiggled it and pulled it out. So I'm gonna do the rest of the 3 left and I'll get back to you. Okay, so here's the new injector on the left, and here's one of the used ones on the right, and this is the number 3, the one that was giving me a problem. If you look on the end, it's got all sorts of carbon buildup. All 4 of them did, but this one was the worst. See, now if you look at the new one, got a bunch of tiny little holes right in the middle. That's where your fuel sprays out. So these just get carboned up and it's not allowing the fuel to spray through anymore. So it's limiting the fuel. That's why it's sending it into limp mode, because it can't get enough fuel and it doesn't want you to damage the motor. I'm wondering if using a fuel injector cleaner would help this over time from building up, but we'll see. We'll pull the fuel rail up, and the injectors, when we pulled this off, left the O-ring, so get yourself a little pick. Carefully pull these out because you don't want to double them up. Here you go, here's your brown thing. I will go ahead and put some links down in the description to some new injectors, as well as all the other parts you're going to need for this job and all the tools that I use for you guys. Okay, so here are the replacement injectors that I've got. These are the Beck Arnley's 159 1073s. Now these ended up just being reboxed Denso injectors. They're the same as the old ones, same exact ones, even say Denso right on the side right there. So I would definitely recommend either these ones or getting them from your dealership. Probably going to be the same thing either way. But you're going to want to take your old ones. They have this little retaining clip right there. That's the clip so that when you clamp the fuel rail down on it, it hits this little notch on the fuel rail and it squeezes it into the cylinder head, but it stops when it hits the top of this so it doesn't squish the whole injector. But we'll just pop these off, the old ones. These are something that aren't gonna really wear out, and sometimes the new ones are a little bit different than the old ones. If they're the same, you can go ahead and use the new ones, but I'm just gonna switch these over because they're not really a wear item. So you just take them and then they just snap on. There's kind of only one way to put them on, so you don't have to worry about getting confused. So here's the fuel rail off. It does have one connection on the end right here. And on one side, it says push. You're gonna wanna hold it down here at the bottom where my thumb is. And then you're gonna wanna grab this while you hold that and pull the fuel rail and it'll come unclicked. Go ahead and inspect all the holes on your fuel rail and go ahead and clean all the surfaces. Make sure there's no O-rings still stuck in there. So you've got a few options for lubing these O-rings. You can just put a little gasoline on it and that will lubricate it a little bit. I'm putting a little bit of silicone paste on it. That should be plenty safe for the rubber, and let it slide in a little bit easier. Just a tiny film will do. On the inside of the head, those holes, you can put a little bit of motor oil just to help seat this part. This one will take our fuel rail, and we're gonna take our injector, and this part with the little clip, it seats into this groove on the rail, and that's the part I was telling you about, that when you clamp it, and that little tab fits into that, so that when we clamp it and squeeze it, this can hit that so it doesn't squish down on the injector. Gives it support in between the metal and the metal. So now we can carefully take that fuel rail and we're gonna plug this left end back in. It should snap in. And we're gonna carefully feed those injectors back in, and you may need to use your mirror so that you can get all the holes lined up. Let's see if I can do it without it. Okay, which way do I need to go, guys? There we go. And you gotta line it up with those two studs on each side, one on each side. Yeah, these little mirrors definitely come in handy. I'll try and put a link down in the description to one of these. So you want to put the two nuts on those studs first, because when we tighten these down, that's what's going to pull those seals into the head. Then you've got 6 studs that you need to thread on. So then after you've got them all started, you're going to want to go down the line and tighten them down a little, and probably go across, you know, all of them a few times. That way it's nice and even to pull it in. Keep going down the line back and forth, and that fuel rail is just gonna slowly get sucked in. You know it's gonna get sucked in because it's gonna be getting closer to that high pressure joint line. But each time you go up and down, the nuts are kind of, and bolts are kind of loose again. So you're just slowly pulling it in to the head, making that seal. So you'll know when you've got them tight, because you'll start to feel a lot more resistance than you felt before. You can get out your torque wrench, or you can just snug and a little extra. When you're tightening it down, you're going to want to make sure this high pressure fuel line lines up with the end of the rail. The rail will be a little far away and then it'll pull in. Now this is a replaceable part, this high pressure joint right here, and I would recommend replacing it if you've reused it more than once. It actually comes in the kit, and you can't really get a torque wrench on this, so you just gotta do it by feel. Okay, now before we put the intake manifold back on, I went ahead and put this insulation cover on, that one on the back. That's the 410mm bolts. And then I'm gonna put this bracket back on, the one that mounts to the engine block that supports this. And the holes on here are slotted for adjustment. So if you can, look where the marks for your the washers on these bolts are, and try and get it lined up to the same place, because these ones were really hard to get to from the bottom. That's why we went to the side one. So just try and get it adjusted. Hopefully this is gonna fit with the stuff on it. Then you wanna clean your surface, and then you're gonna wanna get new gaskets as well. These are the same on both sides, they just have these little tabs. You gotta press them in, which is nice because the manifold kind of locks it in. So hopefully they don't fall out when we're trying to put it back. And don't forget to reconnect your injector plugs before you put the manifold in. There we go. Okay, now I'm gonna try and wriggle the manifold back in. That bracket and everything on. Oh, it's fitting. This hose goes on to. We got the manifold on. Now we just need to tighten it down. It's got a nut on each end and then 3 bolts in the middle. We'll just go ahead and hand tighten all those first. Make sure your gaskets stay seated when you put it into, because I had one fall out. I had to put back in. So then when you're tightening these, you want to start in the middle and then alternate outwards evenly before we get a full final torque on them. You can do it by feel too, but these are 18 foot-pounds. It's not very much, but. And we got to put the throttle body back on, and you can replace that gasket as well. And then those plates, remember, for the nuts, they slip on the back like this with the tab right here in the middle facing inwards. Through, grabs the nut, and there's 4 of those, a little bracket on each side. These 4 get torqued to the same 18 foot-pounds. Just kind of tighten them down, a crisscross pattern. Get them nice and even. Okay, then we're gonna put this hose back in that stupid little blue clip that gave me so much trouble. And this hose right here goes to this here, and that other one from the throttle body went underneath it. Now before we put the new valve cover back on, we want to go ahead and clean all around the surface around where our new gasket's going to go. And see right here in the corners there's some old dried up like gasket maker RTV kind of type stuff. You want to scrape that off and clean that off. We're going to take note of where that was, because we're going to have to put a little bit back there, but I'll show you guys that in a minute after I get it cleaned up. Just try not to get any of that dirt into the engine. And if you use a razor blade, a metal one, be real careful to not gouge the surface. I'll put some links in the description to some plastic ones that are really good, so you don't gouge any of the metal. Okay, then we're gonna take our new gasket for the valve cover. Here's the part number on the Beck Arnley one. This is the same thing, it's got that little tab right here we line up. So the gasket's kind of funny. You want to get it like this so that these bends right here on the corner, those are going to go on this horseshoe side. So the long part right here goes up into the valve cover. Those little tabs, they didn't really correlate to anything I could see. So just go around, feed it around. It's got a lot of little bends in it. I think that's why they're not lasting as long. Either that or it's just bad material. Then on the inside underneath of the valve cover, you're gonna have to find this little seal in the middle. And your new kit should have come with another one. And this just presses in there. It goes into the middle. I think it must feed the, I don't know, maybe the PCV. And a quick note about the spark plug tube gasket holes right here. they are not replaceable. So if you start to leak right here, you're gonna have to buy the whole new valve cover, the whole new plastic valve cover from Honda. So be aware of that. They're not serviceable. Sometimes they used to have a nut and bolt right here, but not on this one. So now it's time to put the RTV on. I'm using Ultra Black. I recommend Ultra Black, Ultra Gray, or the Honda brand gasket maker. So there's 6 points we got to put it on. Right here. Here you can see there's a little bit of a mating right there. And just want to put a little dollop, and then right here in the corner. And over here, this is where the timing cover meets the head. Little dollop there. And then same thing in the back corner, and the same thing as we did right here, 2 in the back. And you want to put the valve cover back on within like 5 minutes of that RTV.
Like a glove.
Press it down a little bit to seat that RTV. Then we'll start hand tightening our valve cover bolts back on. These ones you need to do from the inside outwards again. Remember that funny bolt? It goes in that funny spot in the middle. I think there's 10 bolts. Get them all finger tight. Okay, so once you got it finger tight, then we're gonna go ahead and tighten it. And there's a sequence I've got. Pause that. 1, and we go diagonal. This one, 3. And I'm just doing this very lightly because we'll torque this down in a second. You can do it just by, it's only about less than 10 pounds, but so you can do it by hand without a torque wrench, but, and then the 2 end ones. And then the same pattern, we're gonna go ahead and torque it down. It only gets torqued to about 7 foot-pounds, which isn't very tight. Now you're not going to want to start your car for at least 3 hours or leave it overnight, because that RTV needs to stiffen up before you run it. Now we just need to start buttoning things up, snapping things back into place, connecting hoses. And with these clamps, if you can get them back in the same spot, it's usually best because there's a little indentation in the rubber. Coil on plugs. Good idea to put a little bit of that silicone grease, dielectric grease, on these boots, and a little right in the middle on the tip of the spark plug. That'll keep these boots from seizing on the inside. Make them a lot easier to come off next time. And dielectric grease doesn't affect any of electrical connections. You don't have to worry about that. And it snaps on. Connector back here in the back. And all 3 of these connectors that go to the throttle body. You can put dielectric grease on these too. These were pretty hard to get off, I remember. That way the next person will thank me. These connections only pretty much go one place. They're all color coded and they're different, so you can't really plug them in the wrong spot, which is great. And this thing gets kind of wedged in, hooks in, remember? And a couple of those wiring harness clips go back into the holes. Coils get bolted back on. This snaps in. Now we're gonna take a couple minutes and double check our work. Make sure everything's plugged in and snapped in and all your hoses are where they should be, because you will miss something, I'm sure. The little beauty cover goes over. Bolts down, it's got 5 bolts. And then the last thing I had to do is I just had to jack back up the car and do that 112mm bolt on that L bracket. Remember, on the back of the intake manifold, we were only able to get to that 1 bolt. So I bolted that back in. And on that bracket, know that you don't have to take it off the intake manifold. Once you have that valve cover off, leave the bracket on. Just remove that one bolt. Last thing we need to do is reconnect our battery. Snug this down. I waited overnight for that gasket to set up. Now we can go ahead and start it up. We're gonna go ahead and turn the key on to the on position. That'll prime the fuel pump, and then we can check for any gas leaks. If you have a push button start, just put it in the on, don't start it. That'll just let the fuel pressure build and get to your injectors, so it'll be easier to start. Give it a smell. I don't really smell anything, so let's give it a try. Might take a second to start. All right, started right up. And it's probably gonna take a while. We'll see if any lights come on. It may take a little while for the computer to reset because we disconnected the battery, but we'll go ahead and give it a test drive. Give the engine a smell. Check underneath for leaks. Let it run for a while. Okay, so just got back from a little test drive and all the dash lights went off. Like I said, it may take a couple days or so for the computer to relearn everything and reset since we had the battery disconnected. But that's going to be pretty much it. This job was a success. So hopefully you guys found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Any questions or comments you have about this, go ahead and leave those down below and I'll try and get back to you. Maybe you guys can help each other out too. But if you guys are new to my channel, please do me a favor, click the subscribe and notification bell. That way you can get all my new upcoming videos. It really helps me out. Thanks for watching Johnny DIY. Keep on doing it yourself, guys. Take care.